Hello! Oh my goodness, I am so excited because we are back with another episode of Superwomen Can, and we've got an amazing person who has joined us. But before I introduce this amazing Superwoman, before I introduce her, what I want to remind you is that the Superwomen Can podcast has been created because we're smashing concrete ceilings. We're changing the narrative that says that we can, because we know that we can, because Superwomen can. And we know that we're spinning lots of plates, we're doing lots of things, but we can have amazing, successful, elevated careers that we ever dreamt of. More money, more holidays, more time with family, more balance. And we can have it right now because we deserve it. Now, I'm going to bring you a special guest who's going to tell you just how she's done it and how you can do it too. So without further ado, I want to just introduce Sophie. Sophie, please introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
I love it. I love the intro. Thank you so much. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Sophie, and I'm an award-winning trauma-informed confidence coach and mental and emotional well-being practitioner. So yes, talking about women of color, I am a British-born Chinese and have lived and studied and worked across the globe in countries such as France, China, Canada, of course, the UK, and now I'm based in Singapore. So I help professional, high-achieving international women, particularly from Asian cultures, to feel fully confident within their skin and to own their voice, to fully express truthfully of who they are and what they stand for through trauma-informed positive psychology coaching. So that's who I am. And yeah, I do it through various modalities as well. So that's me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Sophie.
Yeah.
I'm actually really interested to find out more about, trauma. Like how, I know you said trauma informed. What does that mean? Tell us, just tell us, how does that actually work? I'm guessing everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a trauma-informed coach, I really delve into the trauma recovery and emotional healing of my clients. So what that means is that, if we're looking at the lens of cultural nuances as well, that's another level of nuance that has been put onto us as well. So just simply put, trauma is the way in which we have been brought up. There may have been certain events that have made us feel very unsafe within our bodies. So a lot of people think that trauma is something big, like you have to go to war or, have sexual abuse and stuff like that, which is definitely trauma. But it can be as simple as when you were younger. This is very typical of Asian culture as well, where, your parents just tell you like, okay, just do as I say. And, they shout at you. That's kind of emotional abuse that may make you feel unsafe at the age of very young age, so that, you perceive it as a traumatic event. So it's not really the event that actually happens, but it's the way in which you perceived the event to make you feel unsafe. And that is what a traumatic event is. So if that happens on a regular basis, consistently, so say, for example, your mom left you without telling you why, and it was just like a 30-minute grocery shop, and that consistently happened on a regular basis, you may have interpreted it as you are unloved and you don't your mom doesn't love you, and therefore it impacts the way you behave in certain circumstances, even in your relationships to this day as an adult. it's very fascinating stuff, because as an adult, you know logically you're perfectly okay. But as a child, you may not necessarily feel that way. And there is this part of us, those like self-talk kind of voices in your head that kind of sabotages you. And those are coming from and stemming from your past experiences as well.
Wow. So as a mother of 6 children, I know, yeah, and they're quite young. They are really young. But this is quite interesting for me because I'm like, I don't want to traumatize my children in any way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when you're dropping them off to nursery and they're like, I don't want to go, mommy, I don't want to be here. And you're like, okay, you're going to have a good day. It's going to be amazing. Remember you play with that doll. And I know that it's very different the way I probably do it than what my parents probably did it. Like,
Yeah.
there, see you, or run off and, run off. And you're like, where are you, mommy? Where's my mommy gone? And you sit there in the corner crying because your mum's disappeared. And I know that I try my best to explain it, explain why they're going, why I'm leaving, but they still may cry. Is that, it's interesting because I'm thinking, am I traumatizing my kids because they're like, I still don't want to go in, mummy? What do you do? I'm just worrying, am I traumatizing my kids? You've made me think, oh my days, I'm traumatizing
Oh
my
dear,
kids.
I hope I didn't make it seem that way. I always tell my clients who are parents, the only way that you can help them through is just by doing your best, right? There's no way that you can avoid any sort of, events, because you can't control the way in which they interpret it, that particular event, right? So it's okay. You can only do your best to hold a safe space for them. And I always tell my clients who are parents that it's really important to just, ensure that they have a safe environment, a loving environment, a stable environment where they feel the love and they feel seen and they feel heard. And I mean, 6 children is a lot of children. And I'm like, hats off, you are definitely a superwoman and Superwoman can, because you're juggling 1,001 balls, Samantha. So, you can only do your best. And of course, you want them to be independent children, to be able to navigate their emotions and their behaviors, but they also need to take responsibility for themselves and to have their own experiences, because each and every individual will have their journey to, learn certain lessons and overcome their own obstacles as well. And that's what I say to my clients, that you can only do your best for your children. And the most important thing is, if you are working on yourself, that's the key to creating a safe environment. Because if you're doing the inner work as well as your partner is doing the inner work, and you're demonstrating what a healthy relationship is, that is the most important thing that you can do for your children. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love it. For those who are mothers or soon to be mothers or carers, or, have any care and responsibility, this is going to be quite vital, because I'm going to move it on to ourselves, but I really want to talk. We have children and we want to do the best by them. And it's something I say in my coaching as well, which is, because we're spinning so many plates, and depending on your culture, in the Black community, for particularly, it tends to be, and most, to be honest, the woman takes the brunt of the childcare responsibilities. And also, I was reading a study that said that it's 800% that children give you their emotional baggage to the woman, because that's where they feel the safest. 800%. I tell my husband that I'm like, the kids are giving me 800% difference to what they give to you. 800%. Like, quantify that. But what I find is that what you've just said is so perfect. Do the best. I always say, put on your own mask, your own, you're like, when you're in a plane.
Yes.
Traveling, like, before you put your children's please attend to yourself. Please
Absolutely.
make sure you put that
100%.
mask on yourself. And that's what reminds me of when you're saying about, being trauma informed. Look after you first, then you can look after and do the best for your children. And I love what you just said about create safe spaces where they feel loved and accepted and belonging, and make sure your partner has that. They see that loving relationship. And I think as well, culturally, and I don't know if that's the same in your culture as well, it would be good to hear, how does that show up? Like, how does that show up in adulthood if we and have cultures that are not expressive as Western cultures, like African culture? I know they're not expressive. They're not expressive like that. I'm from my culture, my personal culture. My is Caribbean. They may be overly expressive, a bit too much, like the opposite version. And then I'm married to an African who is completely, they don't express that love and that tenderness because that's just not culturally the norm there. So I'm not sure about in your culture particularly, but I'm interested to know, how does that translate when we have different cultures?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I was brought up with very Asian parents, and they were not expressive at all. So that gets passed down to the next generation, and the way in which I had to break through those challenges as well. In Asian culture, we're very much quite reserved and not very expressive. And that's why a lot of the women that come to me, they have challenges, speaking up for what they need and who they are, to know exactly how to express themselves truthfully of what they want at that point of time. Because we've been taught to be respectful of elders, which is great, because I think that's a great value to have. But there's a difference between respect and obedience, right? Obedience is, I say, you do, and there's no questions about it, right? So there's this whole collective mentality, whereas in Western culture it's very much, okay, I'm an individual, I will question you, and if it doesn't make sense, I will ask you questions to get to the bottom of it. Asian culture is a bit different. You just follow the rules and don't go outside of the box, kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting when it comes to like romantic relationships as well, how that plays out. And a lot of the clients that come to me actually have challenges, especially the women, to speak up to their partners and create those healthy boundaries, because they tend to feel as if they are giving too much of themselves, or they just don't know where they're going in their lives, like whether it's in their relationships with family, friends, or their partners, and also additionally with their careers. Because if you are not able to know, if you're told consistently, I say you do, then who are you then?
Wow.
Right.
So now I'm moving to, how does that show up? As I know you said about that, I'd say you do. That is definitely how I got brought up.
Yeah.
I'd say not do as I say, not as I do. That
Yes, that's
like,
it.
well, what? You said I can't have chocolate, but you're eating chocolate, that kind of thing. And so, but how does that show up in terms of us as individuals now? Because we have been imprinted, like you said, we've faced different traumas, and this is now, like I said, gone down to our generation, and we've got to kind of be the chain breaker for our children, I guess.
Absolutely.
So how does that show up, and what can we do?
Yeah, so it reminds me of your question about, the definition of success, right? What is success?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've always been told, sold this whole dream of, okay, you earn your mega bucks, you have to, I don't know about your culture, but in my culture, in especially in Asian cultures, it's very much, you have to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and the typical, okay, when you are 5 years old, you start playing the piano, or some sort of beautiful instrument, which I think is great values, by the way. I mean, in terms of music and stuff like that. But do you really have to be a certain way, according to following the rules and be a doctor, be a lawyer or an engineer? Is that really the definition of success? And do you really have to have, a mansion, for example, that whole idea of let's be a crazy rich Asian? you know I joke with my father, okay, I will do my PhD and then you'll have a doctor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's get married and have children, and a lot of my clients, they're just like following the rules, as they've been sold this idea that, okay, I need to be the best, and that's great value, but what is the best to you?
Yeah.
Right? What is success to you? Because some people, success is just being content with, like a 9 to 5 job, or in my case, my dreams were to really make an impact and not necessarily earn mega bucks. It's just I'm happy with paying my expenses and then being able to travel the world, for example, that kind of thing. What does that mean to you? Because a lot of times when you are following within the lines of this oversold dream or dream per se, you're just a robot in the cog, of the machine. And so that's what I see. It's like really impacting my clients because they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want, and they don't know where the boundaries are for themselves. And so you become a robot and you just feel frustrated and you feel like as if there is something missing in your life and you want more. Some people don't. They just go with it, and they don't realize. But yes, it is, our responsibility to create a better future for this generation and next generation. Exactly what you said, to break the cycle. I like to call it the cycle breaker revolution because we are really revolting against what was passed down from our many generations above us. The science behind it is actually a lot of the trauma can be passed down from 7 generations above us. And it is within our genes. Scientifically, it can be passed down through our genes. It can be passed down, of course, through our behaviors and our cultures as well. And that's really quite a powerful thing to know. And I never realized why, knowing your ancestors or your heritage is so important. But talking about, cultures and women of color and all that, it's really essential to know where we come from because, well, of course, it's our family unit, but it's also because you want to know what they've been experiencing in their past and understanding how to make a better future for yourself, to break those generational traumas and for the next generations to come.
Wow, that's powerful. There's so much to unpick there, and I don't know where to start. But I'm going to start with the question you talked about, which was about success, because I asked a question. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't feel successful." I bring successful women onto this platform to interview them, and the question I have, well, I'm not really successful. And can I ask you the question? If I was to ask your 17-year-old self that same question, are you successful? I'm asking you that question.
Oh, yeah. I definitely feel like I've really, if I were to ask my 17-year-old self, like whether I'm successful today, I would definitely say yes, because I feel, to me, the journey of success is to know oneself really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's not about material stuff for me.
I love that. I remember the responsibility, I feel, as especially as women of color as well, is that we have a responsibility for those who are coming behind us, those who are looking at us. So when I was younger, my 17-year-old self, I remember that success question, wondering, I didn't have that many ambitions. I just wanted to survive because I came from a disadvantage, from poverty. There was no real push for us, as you know, we didn't have it. It was, I was already successful by every step I took, if that makes sense. So then it was, how do you dream bigger than what you are? So my
Yeah.
17-year-old self started to dream bigger. And I have surpassed all my expectations of what I could ever have imagined. I decided that I wanted to have a particular goal. I went for it, surpassed it, lived in different countries. I've done more than I've ever seen anyone in my generation or people that look
Wow.
at me have ever done. I do things, I push the boundaries all the time. Anything, I went up a mountain last year, and I don't know anyone that's gone up a mountain, like just randomly said, right, I'll go up a mountain. Like,
I love it.
so honestly, I don't know anyone. Someone invited me to throw myself out of a plane. It's only because I'm on holiday at that time that I've decided not to do it. And it's not to be successful. Yeah. It's not to be successful. It's not because I am like, oh my goodness, I want to do the next high energy thing. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's because there is no one I know that looks like me that is doing that. And I want to push a new boundary to say I can. When you know that you've come from nothing, or
Yeah.
and you have to create this version, and there are people, genuine people, and my little kids that are looking at me and seeing me as a role model. I want them to feel that they can do and be anything they want to be. And past material. So you mentioned about the material. Do you want a mansion? Yes, I want a mansion, not because it means I've been successful. I am successful because I've got
Yeah.
kids. I think it takes a mansion to fill that house. I want them to
Kids.
have 6 kids, and I want them, they're going to be like
Yes.
my family, they're all very tall, like 6 footers. I want them to have space. I want
Yeah.
space. I want them to give me space after all these years. So yeah, I do. But it's not
Yeah.
because of success. It's because, like I said, but that will be successful to other people. I know that dream will happen because I know I'll make it happen. But for
Yeah.
other people looking in, they'll see it as a success indicator. So I agree that you have to create your success indicators for yourself. I'm looking at my vision board and saying my success indicators it's not money. It's simple things like going to eat nice food. Like, I love food. I love food. So sitting down and saying, I want to try something I've never tried before. I've been China. I love China, and I love Chinese food in China.
Love.
Yeah, I love it. I don't like it in England. I think it's been westernized or something's changed about it. It's just not the same. It doesn't taste.
Yeah.
And depending on where you go in China, there's different types of food, different places. And I get that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't taste the same here. But my point is, I just wanted to, whoever's listening, the people who are listening, think of success for yourself, just as you said, Sophie.
Yeah.
Identify it for yourself. Now, the other thing that you said is about the part about the trauma and identifying it for you. I love that. I love that you can look at anything that you have, and ultimately, if it can disappear, if it can be thrown away, that is not success. If it can be taken away, that's not success. It has to be you. And the fact that you've said that your success is the best version of yourself is just so inspiring. Now, tell me, because we haven't really unpicked you. So
Yeah.
I want to find out more about you as a person and what you've been through. So I know you've grown up here in Britain.
Yeah.
Maybe how that journey was and what traumas you've overcome to be successful.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, like anyone, and everybody has their own personal experience. But yeah, I was born in the UK, in Norfolk, of all places. And it was because of my father, who is or was in the oil and gas industry previously. And my father really came from next to nothing. He's actually from Mauritius, and he's Chinese descent, but we really came from zero. And I haven't experienced that to the degree in which he has, but he always tells me stories about how it was back then, you know, being the minority of Chinese population, because in Mauritius, it's 1% out of the whole population are Chinese descent. Versus, you know, like having colonialism in Mauritius as well. So they were white colonial people there as well. So yeah, he really came from next to nothing, and then he really built himself up. But yeah, we ended up in Norfolk, and that was where I was born. And I mean, I was always brought up in Western culture, but because of how he was brought up and how he is Chinese descent, you know, I find that a lot of, you know, Asians or people who are immigrants, you know, they really attach themselves to their culture because it is a sense of belonging and identity, and they don't really want to let go of that. And so it's been a big influence between the Western culture and the Asian culture within my identity as well. So, I mean, we moved very quickly to China because of a job opportunity in the 80s. And when I was there, you know, I had such a fantastic time. I was only like 2, 3, yeah. But since I was young, I always knew what my purpose was. And it's interesting because my mom always tells me about this story. You know, when I was younger, she used to ask me, like, what was my purpose and what am I here for? And I would there was one moment where I giggled and told her, look, mommy, in my baby language, like 3 or 4 years old, I'm here to help people. And I knew that from a very young age. And it was like just, I've always had that deep inner knowing, you know, since a child, you know, that I was here to serve people. And that's like kind of what has propelled me since I was younger. Right. And talking about that, it's just like we actually moved consistently every 2 or 3 years to different countries. And it gave me the depth and the exposure of different cultures, but also it didn't really give me enough time talking about trauma to process that as a child. When you move country to country, it's actually a grieving process, you know, because you're leaving a life behind, right, that you've built before. And so I didn't realize that when I was younger. And so, yeah, I kind of lost my way along the way of experiencing a lot of traumatic experiences. But I never really forgot that, you know, I was very much like a people person. Yeah. So we moved a lot. And then also I ended up being in boarding school as well. So I went to boarding school down in Dorset in the UK, of all places. I would do the drawl, but nah, I won't attempt to do the countryside kind of accent. But I went to a boarding school, and that was really, you know, intense for me to experience because in actual fact, I went to international schools. So I was very much exposed to a lot of like different cultures, which really helped me immerse myself and feel comfortable with, you know, different cultures, moving country to country. And then bam, I went to the most, you know, English school, which was kind of like a reverse culture shock to me when I went to boarding school, because I've never really been experienced to that. And remembering going back to my father's roots, like we came from humble beginnings. And so going to boarding school is, oh my God, this is a bit too much, you know, because I was very much exposed to different, you know, types of people there, let's say. And what I'm referring to is like the, you know, well-to-do kind of exposure. And then, so when I went to boarding school, actually, you know, typical Asian dad, even throughout the time that I was moving country to country, he just, you know, back then, you just didn't really think, you know, children would understand what is going on. And maybe they didn't. but it's always good to communicate that to the kid anyways, right? So for Asian dad, and mom were like just traveling and didn't really communicate that to me. When I was dropped off at boarding school, I didn't have any clue what was happening. I was just dropped off at school, and then I didn't know what happened then. So, I mean, a lot had happened during my boarding school days. Like, it was very interesting period of time where I had to, defend for myself. So bullying is a huge thing in boarding school, especially, or in any school really. And that was my first time being exposed to so many, English people, because I was very, exposed to international cultures, and also because my parents came from, Asia, like Chinese culture. That was what I was surrounded with,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So yeah, that was my first time that I was aware that, oh, actually I am potentially quite different, you know. And so yeah, but I never felt a certain way, and but at the same time it was interesting to navigate and be exposed to like quite a different culture, which was very outspoken, and whereas I was quite reserved. So that was a huge learning curve as well for me when I was in boarding school. And afterwards, when I did my GCSEs, I changed school to a more international boarding school up in Hertfordshire. And when I was there, yeah, there were certain, things that kind of made me feel a bit lost along the way, emotional, and I experienced also sexual abuse as well throughout my youth, and especially in boarding school. So yeah, and it has been quite a journey going back to feeling lost. I thought, like I forgot my purpose of, serving people because of all the traumatic events that actually had happened in the past. And I mean, when I went through my corporate work, corporate career, I wanted to do something purposeful, but in the end, I ended up in Singapore, and I just really wanted to stay in Singapore. So I did a stint in like banking, and it had been 10 years. But consistently experiencing burnout, panic, and anxiety attacks, and that was why I ended up, going into my own inner healing journey and discovering who I am afterwards, because everything happens in threes. So what happened was, a lot of the time I was trying to find something external outside of me to fill in that void that I didn't know how to fill. And so there was one moment in my career, in my 10-year corporate career in banking and HR and etc., that I just had a tipping point. I was dating someone at that point of time, and it was not really working out very well. We were together for quite a long time, but it was then that everything was crumbling. Like everything happens in threes for me. I don't know about you, but threes. So my anxiety attacks, burnout got really bad. My health was deteriorating. And then afterwards, because of that, my relationship wasn't working. And on top of that, career-wise, because of my health, I had to just leave the corporate world. And I had an agreement with my bosses then to just, call it quits. So that was the tipping point of my journey to really understand, okay, I need to do something different then, because I kept on burning out, right? And yeah, so I dived in, and I ended up in a coaching program, and one thing kind of led to another, and people slowly noticed that there was some shifts. And that's why people started to come to me to receive support. And that's how I became who I am today. And it's been very deep, like just knowing who I am and reframing and rewiring my mind, because exactly what my clients have come to me for, it's what I was before as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah. And it was an eye-opener to really realize actually what was going on, all the generational trauma that had been passed down to me from my parents and their parents, etc. And it's no fault of anybody really, because trauma, you have to create an awareness around it, and I really wondered, okay, like why are things the way they are? Like, why is it that I'm struggling at work and I can't really, have a healthy body right now? And it's so interesting because trauma gets trapped inside your body, and over a period of time, it accumulates inside your body. And that's when I realized that your body actually keeps the score. And that's pretty much what I did in the past many years to actually heal my body, to clear the trauma that has been passed down from, whether it's cultural trauma or even like generational trauma or just trauma in general. That's something that I've been focusing on. Yeah. And
wow.
helping others as well, especially my, Asian cultures as well, but not limited to. Yeah.
Wow. You have you've definitely been through a lot. So thank you for sharing your journey and that
Yeah.
you're healing as well. Because a part of your journey when you've gone through trauma is that you receive healing. So what I want to skirt over that you mentioned that you've had sexual trauma as well, because someone may be listening or just recently or in the past experienced that.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that just to make sure that we've covered it, because it's quite a difficult thing to go through. I know that it was me, and you've maybe healed from that. Can you just explain how you healed, and what, if anyone's listening and they need to know what to do, what advice you would give them just on that particular point, just so we don't skirt over it?
Yeah, it goes very, very deep actually. And it just take one step at a time, because when that actually happens to you, everybody has their different responses to that particular event. But I can only share about my experience as well. So for me, I really had to forgive myself because it really felt as if it was my fault. And it felt as if, yeah, I did this and I provoked it and I did, this is why, because this is why it happened to me, but it wasn't. It took me a long time to really also accept my body as well, so it's just being very gentle with yourself, right? And slowly accepting, yourself as well, like your body, being comfortable, and really going deep into the inner work of forgiveness. And it takes a lot, right? Because I actually forgave, this is like a family member actually that abused me. So I actually got to a point where I forgave that person, and it takes a lot to do that. And it but I want to say that forgiveness is not for the person that did it to you, right? It's actually to let go of the emotions that you're holding within yourself. It's really, forgiveness is really about you, and it's for you, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Because when you're holding on to that event, what you're doing is you're actually hurting yourself, because the only person that feels it is you. And so it really takes a lot to get to that stage. And don't feel that, you're not at that stage yet, or you should be at that stage. There's no shoulds. It's just a slow process of forgiveness and a slow process of healing as well. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And anyone that's listening who's experienced it or who experienced it, we'll put some links down below that you can connect to. You know, do get help. Don't do anything alone. And like you said, Sophie, definitely remember that this is, you know, take each step as it can. Be kind to yourself and forgive not even the person, but like you said, you forgave yourself as well, which is
Yeah.
that is, yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah,
And
you're right as well. You don't necessarily have to forgive the person, but the main person that you need to forgive is yourself. Yeah.
wow, yeah, forgive yourself. That's a lot of trauma. You have been on a journey.
I think everyone has their own journeys as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we do have a lot of, we do have a journey. Some people do generally go through a lot more than others. You are one of those people, and what happens is that you have built resilience. You have built your own version of success, and you've shone despite being in such dark spaces. You've continued to shine, and a lot of people would struggle where you haven't, and that's what people need. So we can end, I would say, is there 5 key steps, or five or even three? That's because you said three is your number. Can you give me three keys to success for anyone listening that they can use to help them being trauma informed and create a life they deserve?
Yeah, first and foremost is like going back to what we spoke about is what does success look like to you? What does it feel like to you? Does it really bring joy to you? And, you know, be gentle with yourself as well, right? Like with it, because a lot of people, they will have certain expectations, like, I'm not there yet, but where is there? You know, I don't know where there
Yeah,
is.
true.
So it's just being in the moment, enjoying that moment, and really appreciating where you are. And, you know, are you feeling happy? You know, are you content? And if you're not, change it, right? That's okay because you can change it. Yeah. And second of all is, I mean, I don't know whether that's two or whatever it is. Anyways,
It's okay.
second of all is really, you know, there's and it's not because I am a trauma informed, you know, coach, but to get professional help, right? Whether or not, you know, wherever you are in the journey is really going to support you with your mental and emotional well-being. It in the past, right, you know, it was seen as a secret or, you know, something to hide, you know, that seeking out for professional help meant that you're not normal, right? There's like a stigma, and there is still a stigma around it in Asia to a certain degree, but there's actually nothing wrong with it. It's just to be able to understand yourself, and whether you do it with a professional, I would recommend that, but to be able to understand yourself for yourself, right? That is the definition of success to me, because once you know who you are, the world is your oyster, because you will know exactly what brings you joy, what, you know, lights you up, and, you know, you would be able to have deeper human connections as well with others, because then that's when you show up authentically as you, and that's when people of like-minded, you know, people will be attracted to you, and, you know, you'll be able to create those deeper human connections. And third of all is, do not be afraid to speak up of what you need and what you want in your life, and don't be afraid of receiving help, and, you know, having that supportive community. If you don't have one, just build one. You know, I know that through my journey, a lot of my friends have evolved over the period of time because I have evolved and I have changed. And so having that support network is what will make you thrive. And I like this, I think it's an African proverb. If you want to go alone, sorry, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is I preach this like all the time, because I know that my women, like that come to me, they've been they're highly driven, they're highly successful individuals, but they also feel as if they've got the world on their shoulders, and that they're juggling 1,001 things. And I want to tell them that, take care of you and have that community. And if you want, seek out for professional support as well. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually quite sexy to do, I feel.
Oh wow, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Sophie, please tell us where we can find you. And we didn't say your full name, Sophie Leung.
Yeah. So you can actually find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn, you can put www.linkedin.com/in/Sophie, SOPHIE, Leung, LEUNG. And that's where you can add me on there. Or you can find me on Instagram, which my Instagram handle is Sophie Leung Co. So it's SOPHIELEUNGCO. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll put the links. Yeah.
So we're going to put all the links down below. So
Perfect.
Please do connect. My favorite one will be LinkedIn. So I'll be following you everywhere on all the platforms. But my favorite one, where I spend most of my time, as you know, is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I just want to say a huge thank you, because not only have you kind of opened my eyes to what trauma I've personally gone through. If I could sit there and go through all my trauma that I've been through, but then how it kind of may have shown up in my adult life as well. And then what I don't want to put on to my own children and their children. If I can be that cycle breaker now, I want to be that. I want to be that person to break anything else that has been going through generations in my ancestors or otherwise. So I want to say thank you, because you've put me on the journey. I'm going to follow what you're posting on your socials.
Aww.
And continue to connect with you and learn more about trauma. And if you're listening today, you want to continue to know and learn more, because I think we've opened up. This is probably the longest podcast I've recorded. I was debating whether or not I was going to put it in 2 parts, and actually I feel like we're going to keep it as one big long one as a special edition. Yeah, keep it as a long edition, because it's deep, isn't it? And
yeah,
if you want more, it's deep. Trauma's deep. So if you want more, you're going to have to follow Sophie to find out more. And
thank you.
of course, and continue to shine. And just remember, so thank you, Sophie. And just remember to listen out for the next podcast. Remember to like, share, follow, put your notifications on, comment on wherever it is, because the more that we get that, the more we can bring this out to you and have amazing guests as Sophie who's come on today.
Thank you.
Last word, Sophie, before we